Okay, hey guys, yes. Hello, yes, I'm back with another book review, and this is amazing. This story that I'm about to tell you now, it's myths and legends, and here is the book right here. It's actually called Myths and Ancient Greeks and Rome. Okay, and it's actually by let's see. And the editor is John Holdren, and it's also an assistant editor is Vanessa Wright. Okay. Now, okay, and there's many little stories in this book, and they all are amazing. But it's a few that I wanted to talk to you about today. And the first one is the Golden Age and what came after. Okay, so it's like tables of contents in here. I don't know if you can see it well, but here we go. And very, very long time ago, even before Zeus, there were these, I guess these rulers, or I guess gods, goddesses, what did you want to call them? But they lived like on Mount Olympus, and they were called the Titans. It was 12 of them all together, and it was like six brothers and six sisters. And their father was that their father was the sky, and their mother was the earth. They had a form of, men and women, but they were very, very tall, like giants, and they were very powerful, more powerful than thunderstorms, it says. And basically, they ruled the earth for ages and ages. And there was the youngest Titan name was Kronos. And he was like he ruled for a while, and he, and he was so old and been around for so many years that they actually called him Father Time. Pretty much it was like a paradise. Like they had summertime, springtime, and autumn all at once. And they lived so good, and it was never any jealousy or hate or anything like that. And they didn't even need houses because they didn't have storms or rain or anything like that. It was like a paradise. They didn't have money, so it wasn't any like jealousy or anyone was richer than anyone else or anyone had anything more than anyone else. It was like all pretty much equal, and they all shared, and they all ate fruits from the trees and things like that. Yeah, all like the golden times of peace and plenty. So like no one had to do work during a happy time, and there was no sickness or sorrow or anything like that. And the men and women, they lived for hundreds and hundreds of years, and there was never no gray hairs and wrinkles or getting old. But everyone was handsome and young. Like I said, they didn't have any houses because there was no cold weather or nothing for them to be afraid of. And everyone was everyone's friend, so they lived really good without any wars or anything like that. And during the golden age, like the gods and men, they all obeyed Kronos because he was like very powerful and no one would go against him. And Kronos also made that no new god would challenge his rule. So when his wife Rhea, when she used to get pregnant, he used to actually swallow their babies whole. Yes. But Rhea, she made it her business, like, I'm going to have a child and I'm going to be able to keep my baby. So when she got pregnant for the sixth time and she had her child, she hid him in the mountain. So what she did was she tricked them. She wrapped a rock inside a stone, like inside baby's clothing, and gave it to him to swallow. So he thought he was swallowing the baby, but she actually took her baby to a cave up in the mountains, to protect him so he can grow up. And she wound up naming his baby Zeus. And in the cave, he ate like ambrosia and nectar, and eventually he grew up to be very strong and tall. So what Zeus did as he was growing up, he was plotting against Cernus, his father. And what he did was he tricked him into eating this herb that he thought was going to make him strong, but instead it made him throw up the five siblings that he had swallowed. So now Zeus had the aid of his brothers and sisters to wage war against Kronos and take over. Yeah. And he also, like recruited different friends and creatures like the Cyclops and things like that to help him, defeat Kronos and the Titans. Yeah, take over. And Zeus also had three other monsters who had like 100 arms apiece, and they were just throwing like bolts and rocks and whatever, just constantly at the Titans, and it became too much. Yeah, Zeus did. He threw this big sharp lightning bolt into the woods and burnt all the woods up, boiled the water, and really just like destroyed with their paradise pretty much. So Cronus couldn't keep up the battle and whatever, and eventually he had cried out for peace to Zeus, like, can we now just have peace? This is just too much. And so what Zeus did was he banished them, like he bonded them in unbreakable chains and sent them to the underworld, where that 100-hand monster kept an eye on them in captivity for the rest of their existence. That made men start quarreling with each other, wanting riches, wanting more than the other man, and things changed. Mm. Some men wanted to be kings and rule over others, and the stronger ones wanted to make the weak ones into slaves, and it was like chaos. Even start tearing down like the fruit trees and things like that, so they won't have anything to eat, and a lot of them will start was starving and things like that. Yeah. And instead of everybody's being everyone's friend, now they start being everyone's foe. Like everybody was against each other. Yes. And instead of peace, now there was war. Instead of innocence, now there was crime. Yeah. Happiness, now there was misery. And that's how Zeus became the mighty king of the gods, and basically the golden age ended. All right, and I just felt like, wow, that was deep. Big, but at the end of the day, I know I had read or seen actually a movie. I think it was Shaka Zulu, and I think he also it was like he was like a king of Africa or something like that, of like South Africa, I believe. I'm not sure. I can remember, but I remember something about he used to kill his boys because he didn't want them to kill him and take over as king. And I think that was I don't know, that was big, I guess, back in them times or whatever. Like, and especially if they was good rulers, I guess they didn't have faith in their seeds of becoming good rulers. I don't know, but yeah, I read where that happened many times in history. Another story that I really liked in here. It was called her name is Atalanta. Atalanta is the fleet-footed huntress. Yes. It was a tongue twister. It's the fleet-footed huntress. What happened was the king had a baby, and I think it was from Athens, I believe, and no, Arcadia. Arcadia is where um I guess their country was, and he had his wife had the queen had a baby, but it was a girl, and he was like, what good is this little girl? I need sons, what I'm saying, to become kings, to become warriors, and to learn how to hunt. And what good is her? Only thing she's gonna do is dance around and sing. So what he did was he told his best man, he said, listen, take this baby into the woods and leave her. Like she's no use to me. So he, his right hand man, I guess he felt kind of bad for doing that, but he did. He left the baby there. He could hear the baby crying, but he just ignored it and just kept going. and the baby was just out there just crying for his mother and was hungry and whatever. And she was just laying there on this like a pile of grass, just sitting there waiting for her end. But what happened was it was a bear looking for her cubs that someone had snatched when she was away getting food. So she was out on the search for her cubs and she ran across this baby crying. By then she was so weak and hungry, and the bear, and the mother bear, she just laid beside the little baby, and she then the next day she went out and got the baby some food, and then and the baby survived. She started growing up and whatever, and the bears were her family, and all bears was coming from far and wide to see this new cub that this bear had, and so they was just, they took care of her. No one harmed this baby. They raised her, and then one day she was out, she had grew up and she was a young child and whatever. And she was out getting food, and these hunters seen her, and they ran after her, got her, and hunted her down and took them back with them, and they wound up raising her, and showing her love and care, and and showing her how to be a huntress, how to hunt, how to be a warrior, how to fight with swords and spears and things like that. And she became a great huntress. Yes. And so one day it was a king from Corridon, I think that's the way you pronounce his land, his kingdom. He had said that how this wild boar was basically terrorizing them, what I'm saying, tearing down their food, their trees, and coming through into where they were living, and just tearing up the houses, the huts they were living in, and just running amok constantly, just. And he said he sent a message far and wide for all the hunters and warriors to come and help him get rid of this wild boar. So her family, they went, and she went too and whatever, and the king asked her, Corey then said, okay, hi young lady, would you like to go with the rest of the ladies and learn how to make bread and sew clothes and things like that while we go hunt this boar? And she said, no, I'm here to go out and hunt this boar also, you know. And they laughed like, what? Oh no, like, and the men, they was like, oh, I'm not going out with a woman hunting, and this and that. And so one guy stood up and said, why are you afraid that maybe she's a better huntress than you, and she will show you out, and or you're intimidated by that? And they was just like, no. And so they didn't leave. They wound up all going out, but some still had mixed feelings about her being there, her being a female and all. So but what's crazy was a lot of them tried. They probably ran into this wild boar, and his boar killed many of the warrior men. But one day, and she had her opportunity, and she launched her spear deep into the boar where she wounded it, and then the guy who stood up for her wound up throwing another spear and actually killing the boar. So that what they did was back then they just ripped the actual fur off the boar, and it was like a presented as a gift to the one who slain the boar, and they gave it to the guy, but he said no, I'm gonna give it to her because she actually hit the shot that weakened this boar for me to kill it. So he wound up giving it to her. And so everybody was praising. They had a parade, and everybody was really looked up to her and was like, "Oh wow, she's very great. She's great," and this and that. And the king of Croydon, he thanked her and whatever. And so as she went back home or whatever, they all heard about her and the stories of her, and a lot of men was coming like wanting to make her their wife, and she was like, what? And she just kept turning them all down, and they didn't like that. They said, what's wrong with you? I'm trying to make you my wife, and you're saying no, and I think you need a husband. She was like, okay, listen. She said, if you feel as though you're worthy to be my husband, I have a challenge for you. She said it was a lot of men there too, and she said she challenged them. She said, I want you up. It was going to be a race through the mountains into the riverside, and whoever gets there first, if you win, if you beat me there, then you can have my hand in marriage. But this the catch: if you don't win, I get to take your life. And they was like, what? You mean, wait a minute. You gonna kill us if we don't win? She was like, yes. And they was like, so some of them left. They said, no, I'm not going for that. Of course some of them wasn't feeling that at all. They like, oh no, I'm not going to die because then she said, oh well, maybe you don't have the confidence that you will win, that you can beat me racing to this through the mountains, through the woods, and to the riverside. And they was like, but you saying that if we don't win, you will take our lives. And she was like, yes, you have to surrender your life to me. And so this one guy came. So a lot of them tried, and lo and behold, she killed them. She took their lives, and a lot of them walked away. They wasn't going to take that bet, you know. But this one guy showed up, and he was like, "Hi," and he was very, he had a beautiful mannerism, and she just thought he was in the way he spoke, and she just thought that he was such a gentleman. She liked the way he approached her. And he was like, "Can I have the opportunity to become your husband? I want to race you." And she was like, "No, because then I'll have to take your life if you don't win. And I wouldn't want to do that." He said you're such a good soul, and she could feel that from him, and she didn't want to take his life. And he was like, "No, I think I can win. I really believe in myself, and I want this opportunity because I would love for you to be my wife." And she was like, "Oh man," so she agreed to it. So they racing or whatever, but she didn't know that this guy, he went to the guy, the thing there, and he asked her, "Could you help me? I want this woman. I want this huntress as my wife. So can you help me?" So what she did was she gave him 3 golden eggs. And he was like, "You take these golden eggs," and she told him what to do. And so during the race while she was running, and she also gave them um like 100 steps ahead of them, is like, to, give them the opportunity to, actually win. So she gave them like a head start, like 100 steps a head start. And so when the race began and she was running up on him, and he could see that she was gaining up on him, he took one of the golden eggs out and he threw it. And she seen the golden eggs and she stopped and she was like, "Wow, it's so pretty. Let me stop and go get this." And she would go and she would get the golden egg, and that which gave him another chance to get ahead 100 steps. So then she would continue running again, for the race, and then she would like come up on him again. Then he would feel her, and he would see her coming, gaining on him. So he would throw the other egg, and this egg was much bigger and even more shinier than the first one that he had threw. And so she would stop and say, "Wow, let me get that. That is just beautiful. It's amazing." So she would stop and she would look for the egg wherever it threw. And that gave him some time to gain more distance, to the finish line. And so she finally got the egg, and she puts it in the thing, and she started running again. And then she'll start gaining on him again. And then once he see her gaining again, he had this third egg, which was even bigger than the second one and more shinier and more glamorous and beautiful than the second one. And so what he did was he wound up throwing that, and that time that one like fell into the river. So she had to go, and she's looking, and she got it pretty quick though. And but then by then they was running, and she was saying, "Oh, I don't want to kill him. I don't want to win." And so she kind of like let him win, and she slowed down a little, so because they was close to the finish line, she let him go ahead over the finish line and be the winner. And he won her as a wife, and they wound up getting married and living for a very long time in Arcadia. Yes. And all right, and so that was it, guys. It was just these two, and maybe I'll share some more with you once and another time and another date. But that's the two stories, and I thought they both was great for a book review. So if you want to get this book, I'm saying it has a lot of great myths in it, and I'm pretty sure you would enjoy it because I did too. I enjoyed reading it. All right, and that was it, guys. And I want to say thank you for joining me, and love you.